Hello friends, my name is Tyler Brownrigg and welcome to another episode of Hitting the Field Main Show. Today, spring football is back for the fifth time in as many years, I feel like. We started with the AAF, then the XFL, then the USFL, then the XFL again, and now it's the UFL. Will this one stick around? We shall see. And following that, we'll be giving our predictions for the MLB season and what the playoff standings will look like at the end, as today is opening day. And then finally, I'll be giving a rant on the historic rookie season that Victor Wembenyama has given us this year. So stick around because you will not want to miss this episode of Main Show.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated chance, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back, okay? Always locked in, I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.
And we are back. Joining me for this UFL segment is Main Show regular Nick Cohen. And making your debut on Main Show, Daniel Valdez. How do you feel being on Main Show for your first time?
I feel excited. It's a really big opportunity for me.
All right, and we're glad to have you. So let's get right into the UFL. Week 1 is this weekend. And we're going to be previewing the 4 matchups in this week. So our first matchup is the reigning USFL champion Birmingham Stallions going up against the reigning XFL champion Arlington Renegades. So Nick, I'll start with you. Tell us about Birmingham. Do you think they're going to win it?
I think they're going to absolutely sweep. I mean, this is going to be a bloodbath. Birmingham, they won the only 2 recent, like in the new age of the USFL, they won the only 2 championships. They dominated in that league, and that league was so much better than the XFL. I mean, I believe the Arlington team, they won the XFL with a losing record. Like, are we serious? It's not even going to be a matchup. Birmingham is going to run away with this game.
And now, Daniel, I want to ask just real quick your thoughts on this matchup. As Nick said, Arlington won the XFL with a losing record, a record of 4-6. Do you think that was a bit of a fluke, or they can maybe replicate that success some way? And it'll start in this matchup.
I think it's going to be a fluke. I think that was more like a fluke, that Arlington, they had to go through a much easier schedule in their division compared to some of the other teams. So definitely Arlington, I don't think they were going to match it with Birmingham, and Birmingham has a much better roster. 15 out of their 50 players are former NFL draft picks. It's going to be a bloodbath for Birmingham to beat them down. And
shout out Bob Stoops, Oklahoma legend, as their head coach. And now moving on to our second matchup, the St. Louis Battlehawks will be taking on the Michigan Panthers. And I think we can all agree St. Louis is going to be taking this. Michigan has been a bit of a bottom feeder in spring football, from what I've gathered. Any thoughts, either of you?
Not really. Michigan turns the ball over a whole lot more. I mean, they had 12 interceptions compared to only 6, and we know that turnovers lose games. So I think you're spot on. Michigan's losing this.
Absolutely. And now moving on to our third matchup, the DC Defenders versus San Antonio Brahms. I believe that's how you pronounce it? Brahmas. Do you know what that is? I don't know what that is.
It's a kind of bowl that's mostly in Texas.
Gotcha. All right. Can you tell me about this matchup, Daniel? What are your thoughts about what's going to happen in this one?
I do think that DC is the better team compared to San Antonio. DC has had a lot better matchups. They have a lot better roster, and they've beaten San Antonio several times in the past few seasons. So I definitely think DC will win this game.
I agree, especially they have Jordan Ta'amu as their quarterback, who has been a proven player in spring football leagues. And now our final matchup, the Memphis Showboats taking on the Houston Roughnecks. Houston Roughnecks, I remember in the original XFL, were the team of P.J. Walker before COVID happened and all that. So, though I'm going to lean towards Houston in this matchup. I don't really know much about Memphis. Their quarterback, Cole Kelly, is a bit of an unknown, pretty mediocre stats. But same with Brandon Silvers over there, as you can see on the graphic. Quarterback play in spring football has been their Achilles heel. So, Nick, give me your thoughts on this game before we move it along.
It's kind of similar to you. I don't have too many takes on this game. I can agree with your pick. I just want to give a shout out to, I think the Showboats is an awesome name for a team. Just a little side note.
And Daniel, any closing thoughts before we move on to our championship contenders?
Yeah, this is a really good matchup. I mean, these are two kind of regional teams. I do have to give props to Houston for giving an Oilers kind of reference to their uniform. So I really do enjoy that.
Bring the Oilers back to the city of Houston. They deserve it. All right.
Don't get rid of the Texans either. I mean, they got something going.
The Titans don't deserve to wear those uniforms. Anyway,
wow.
I digress. All right. But now moving on, let's talk about the teams that we think are going to be contending for the championship here in this year one of the UFL. Nick, I'm going to start with you, and I think you have the betting favorite for the title right now.
Okay, good.
I believe.
So I guess it's not a hot take, but I do have the Birmingham Stallions. They should run away with this league. I mean, they won, as I mentioned before, in the new age of the USFL, they won both championships out of a possible 2. They just dominated in that league, and now, in my humble opinion, they have an upgrade at quarterback, Matt Corral. He was a stud at Ole Miss, not really given a good enough chance in Carolina, in my opinion, in the NFL. He was released, signed to the Patriots, and then released again. I don't know what was happening in the locker room, but I don't really care because the UFL is less dramatic than the NFL. So if you can just play, if you can ball out, which I believe he can, then he should be good. It's also worth mentioning, at running back, they have Bo Scarborough, former stud at Alabama. He's on IR right now, and so is Marlon Williams, former stud UCF receiver. He was amazing. And then my favorite receiving threat on their team is Amari Rodgers, former third-round pick from the Packers by way of Clemson. He was pretty good. And then they have Jay Sternberger, best tight end in the league. And then also, quick shout out to Thaddeus Moss, son of Randy Moss, also at tight end. He's going to be backing up Sternberger. They have a stud team.
Yeah, their offense is clearly their strength. They were one of the top offenses in the USFL in its final season. But now I'm going to move on to my pick for the championship contender. I picked the St. Louis Battlehawks. They were in the XFL last year. They had a 7-3 record. They actually ended up missing the playoffs because of how the playoff structure worked. But this is a very well-rounded team from what they previously were. 24.9 points per game. That was second behind only, I believe, the Birmingham Stallions, in terms of all the teams currently now in the UFL. Their defense was a bit average. 20 points per game, though, again, that was in this, 20 points per game in the spring football leagues, that's not a lot. That is a lot, excuse me. Because again, the quarterback play is the big thing that's what sets these teams apart from standard NFL teams. And speaking of quarterbacks, their quarterback is actually a very familiar name in NFL circles, former NFL quarterback A.J. McCarron, most known for his time with the Cincinnati Bengals as a backup. And another former NFL stud, Vic Beasley, greatest one-year wonder we've ever seen, former Defensive Rookie of the Year winner. But honestly, I think St. Louis probably is the dark horse for the title, but I really do like their odds. And now, moving on to our final team, Daniel, tell us about yours.
Yep, I picked the DC Defenders. I think the DC Defenders should be one of the better teams that came out from the XFL. Last season, they went 9-1 in the regular season. Their only one loss was against the Orlando Guardians. May they rest in peace. And of course, in the championship game against Arlington, which was a big shocker. Since their start back in 2020, they've had 0 home losses. 0 home losses. Wow. That's so impressive. They have a great atmosphere, including their traditions like the beer snake that's gone pretty much big in the XFL. They have major players like QB Jordan Tamu, who had thrown for over 1,878 yards, 14 touchdowns. And even they have a great defense, but even their center back, Michael Joseph, who last season had 4 interceptions and returned back for 2 touchdowns. So they might be one of the better teams coming into the UFL and could be a potential runner for the championship.
I'm sold.
All right, I think this will be a very interesting inaugural season for the UFL. Will this be the one to finally have spring football stick around? We shall see, but stick around because on the next segment, we will be talking about MLB. You won't want to miss it.
Hello, my name is Tyler Brownrigg. I hope you're enjoying watching whatever show it is that's playing right now here on Hitting the Field Network. And if you're interested in more of our shows or want to know more about the one you're currently watching, don't worry, I'm here to tell you. Our week starts off on Mondays with HTF Bets, hosted by the Bets Boys, Andrew Montana Ezra Hines and Giovanni St. Cyrin. You can catch that show live Mondays at noon for all things betting in sports. I highly recommend it. And then you can follow it off on Tuesday with The Combine, hosted by the illustrious Ty Patton. If you're in for a more laid-back, kind of podcast-style show, a lot more casual, that is definitely the show for you. Maybe you'll catch some Ty Squared action with me on there. Wednesdays every week, you'll be able to catch the vlog, learn about what's going on behind the scenes here in the studio at Hitting the Field. Get to know more about us, especially the people behind the camera, who they are, and what we do to make these shows every week. And on Thursdays, live at noon, you can watch the main show with me as your host every Thursday, where we'll be covering all of the major storylines for any sport, be it football, basketball, hockey, soccer, you name it, we'll be talking about it on the main show. And then Friday, you can watch Nighttime with your hosts Maddie Glass and Patrick Previty for all things college sports, especially with a focus on UCF sports and maybe the ones you haven't heard about so often, like tennis or women's track and field. It can be anything college on Nighttime. And if you're interested in joining Hitting the Field and you're a UCF student, DM us on any of our social medias at Hitting the Field, and also give us a follow on all those and subscribe to this channel if you want to catch more of our content. But enjoy the rest of your show. As always, I'm Tyler Brownrigg, and I'll be seeing you on Main Show.
And we are back, and joining me for this MLB segment, our MLB expert in John Warner and host of Nighttime, Maddie Glass. We're back. We're back together again.
Yeah.
This is so great. Anyway, John, real quick though, I do want to ask, because Andrew told me to ask you this. Were you up to something during spring break that was kind of crazy?
I might have just been. They call me the weatherman the way I bring the rain to the local news.
We can see it here now, playing for you on screen. Look at that. I mean, truly impeccable form, honestly, shooting from John Warner, hanging out in the corner. But anyway, moving on. I digress. Let's get into our MLB predictions. So we will be predicting the playoff standings for both the American League and the National League. So we'll start it off with the American League. And John, I'm going to start with your American League predictions. And also, in each of our league predictions, we have one hot take team that we want to highlight. John, let's start with you. Tell us your standings and then your team that you want to highlight.
Okay, so winning the American League East, I have the Baltimore Orioles. They're going to win over 100 games. I think that's not really that hot of a take. They are the best team in the American League. They broke onto the scene last year in a big way. A ton of young talent, and they added the best pitcher, arguably, in the National League last year, Corbin Burns. He's a perennial Cy Young candidate, so that'll only serve to help them. So I like the Orioles to honestly win the American League, perhaps even the World Series. I have the Astros winning the American League West. They had a nothing special offseason. They did have Josh Hader, but they're the Astros. What can you say? They've been the class of the American League for several years. I have the Twins winning the Central just because it's by far the worst division in baseball, so it sucks. But then my hot take is the Seattle Mariners winning the wild card, and I like this team a lot. They have a lot of nice pieces. J.P. Crawford has developed into one of the best defensive shortstops, and his bat has also come a long way. He had a really a lot of clutch hits down the stretch for the Mariners. Even though they fell just short of the playoffs last year, they had a three-way race with the Rangers and Astros coming into the final week of the season, and they were the ones left on the doorstep, which was sad for them, but they have sky-high expectations once again coming into this season, and I like their team a lot.
Maddie, just a quick thought. You have the Blue Jays in over the Rays that John has. Any reason for that, you think?
I just think the Blue Jays, every season we come into this, every season it's oh my God, the Blue Jays are going to win the World Series. Oh my gosh, they have so much star power. And I just think the Rays are more consistent. They're better coached. And I just think it's the Rays. They're going to at least make the wild card. And I don't think that's a crazy opinion. And I just, I believe in them.
Mm-hmm. All right, now I'm going to be moving on to my AL predictions. I actually have the Houston Astros finishing as the top team in the AL with 97 wins, and the Orioles finishing only one win behind them, still winning the AL East. And then finally rounding out with the AL Central, the Minnesota Twins with 87 wins and 79 losses. God, the AL Central is awful. Yes. Now, and I'll mention my two wildcard teams before my highlight, the reigning champion Texas Rangers and the Seattle Mariners. But here's the thing. I have the New York Yankees as a top wildcard team. Neither of them have the New York Yankees in their final standing predictions, which I think is crazy.
I think it's crazy.
The Yankees are still an insanely talented team. Yes, Garrett Cole will be out for the first 2 months or so, which is big, because their pitching staff already was looking a bit kind of sketchy with Garrett Cole because you don't know because Rodon needs to like figure it out. You still have Nestor, Marcus Stroman. Can he play into form? But this hitting core is still stacked. Aaron Judge. You have Juan Soto, Anthony Volpe, who had an amazing rookie year, winning a Gold Glove at shortstop, 21 home runs, 24 steals, and Giancarlo Stanton. Yes, while he's getting older, he's getting up there in age, and his health is still a question. His bat is still a powerful presence to their hitting lineup, and if he can stay healthy, I think he can have he can keep some form. But I want to add, I'll start with you, John. Why do you have the Yankees out?
So I do not have the Yankees in for several reasons. One, because the American League is just so crowded, especially the American League East. That is probably the best division in baseball, top to bottom. Like, you have 4 teams that could easily be playoff teams. Not so much the Red Sox, sorry Ezra, but the rest of them could be bona fide playoff teams. But like you said, like I feel like when you're running down the Yankees roster, yes, there is a ton of talent there, but it was like every one of them has like a little bit of what if. Like, I find myself saying, what if they take a step back? What if Giancarlo Stanton gets hurt? That's not really a what if. That's when he gets hurt.
That's a guarantee.
Garrett Cole's already hurt.
When he gets hurt and for how long?
Carlos Rodon, he's took a major step back with the Yankees last year after coming over from San Francisco. And then will Nestor Cortez bounce back? He had a great year the year before, but he sucked last year. So you just never, like, there's a lot of talent there, but there's also a lot of questions. And in a division and league where you do not have time to figure yourself out, I think that the Yankees are left out of the playoffs.
I also just think Aaron Boone is just like, what is it called, a sitting duck? Like, it's just like, I don't think he's going to be there after this year, and like, I just don't see it. I think, didn't Aaron Judge already have an injury in spring training where he was sitting out too?
Yeah,
like, it's just, there's so many what ifs, and like, the hype is always with the Yankees. Yes, they're going to have a good offense, but Garrett Cole, if they lose Garrett Cole for any amount of time, they're screwed.
I think there's a lot of scares. I think you're being a bit harsh, but now let's move on to our final AL predictions for you, Maddie. What do you have for us?
All right, well, I have the Orioles having the best record in the AL. The Mariners actually winning the West, which I guess you had a wild card. I guess that's a hot take as well. I'll skip my hot take and then go to the Astros being a wild card team, Rangers being a wild card team, and the Rays. And my really hot pick that everyone has disliked is the Guardians winning the AL Central. And yes, this is a hot take, but they should improve from last season. They have a brand new manager, Stephen Vogt.
Yes, good job.
And last season they went 76 and 83, and the key to improvement for this season really falls on their young hitters. Pitching, there's not really much to worry about. That's been one of the strengths of the organizations for a while now, and they had 3 pitchers last season that really showed what they can do. And I'm expecting Shane Bieber, their ace, to have a bounce-back season. And like I said, it's mainly about how their offense plays. Last season, they were last in home runs, 29th in slugging, 27th in runs scored. They obviously still have Jose Ramirez, who will once again probably have an MVP caliber season, but they have to improve on offense. And I think some of that can come from Josh and Bo Naylor playing more. They weren't even qualified hitters last season, so this season they're going to get more at-bats. And actually, I read in Baseball Savant that the offense was poor, but it was actually because it was super unlucky. Their quality of contact was actually better than their batted ball results. So getting a little analytical,
getting deep.
I think their pitching is going to carry them to this division. And like Tyler said, this division is not good. The Twins are the favorites, but they have a lot of question marks too.
It's like the Twins are like kind of like just Correa, really, hitting-wise, and then pitching is just like whatever. We lost Sonny Gray, so it's like the Central is just like whatever, dude. Honestly, anything happened. But now let's move on to the National League. And Maddie, I'll start with you this time for the National League. Tell us your standings for the National League.
Okay, so firstly, I have the Dodgers with the best record. The Braves winning their division. I'll skip my hot take. Phillies being a wild card team, Diamondbacks and the Cubs being a wild card team. So going into my hot take along into the Central, the Cincinnati Reds winning the NL Central. They had an unexpected run last season, improved by 20 wins from the season before, and only missed the playoffs by 2 games. So I think they're showing that they're ready to exit rebuild mode and take that next step. I believe this division is wide open, and they haven't actually won the NL Central since 2012, which is really surprising. And last season, their entire improvement was due to their young talent. They actually had 16 rookies make their major league debuts this season, and it was highlighted by Matt McClain, Ellie De La Cruz, and Spencer Steer, who all received Rookie of the Year votes. One key to their improvement that is going to need to improve this year is starting pitching. They had a 5.43 ERA last season by starters, which is obviously poor. But I believe in Frankie Montes, who is finally healthy after those 4 years with the Yankees, right? He played a season with the Yankees. And then Hunter Green, who had 22 starts last season. I know people are worried about some things, but I think he's a potential ace. He, in 112 innings last season, he had 152 strikeouts, and I think it's possible that he leads their rotation. So I think they're basically a very exciting team. They're going to have a lot of fun moments and going to be one of the most fun teams to watch and certainly have the talent to win this division.
I agree. They certainly are like the Orioles, I think, of the NL League. The young up-and-comers,
Right.
maybe not quite on the Orioles level yet, but they're certainly a talented young team.
And the Guardians are going to do what the Reds did last year, by the way.
The Guardians.
Now, John, I want you to tell me about your NL standings picks.
All right, so of course I have the Atlanta Braves coming in at the top seed in the National League. They're going to win
No
the East
surprise from the Georgia boys.
for like the 7th year in a row. It's their division to lose, obviously. The Dodgers, I do have finishing behind them just because the uncertainty, if you want to call it, around the Shohei Ohtani situation. I do think that'll have a slight effect on how they play this year. I mean, obviously they're the Dodgers, so they're still going to win 100 games. I have the Chicago Cubs, who is my hot take, more on that in a minute. And then rounding out the wild card, I have the Reds, Phillies, and Diamondbacks. And the NL feels pretty cut and dry to me. It's not as like competitive as the American League, I don't think, in terms of just the amount of teams that can make the playoffs. But I like the Cubs to be my hot take pick and win the NL Central. And I think that their most important offseason move was not a player, it was their manager. They stole Craig Counsell from the division rival Milwaukee Brewers, and I think he'll have a really great effect on this team because he knows what it takes to squeeze talent out of teams. Like the Brewers have never been the most competitive team, but they are always right there in the conversation with the NL Central. So maybe with a more talented roster, we'll see what he's able to do in a bigger market. And I also liked the fact that they re-signed Cody Bellinger. He's clearly their best player. Him and Dansby Swanson will look to lead that lineup. And along with Christopher Morel, who I think will take a big step forward this year, he's really one of their only power bats besides Bellinger. So they're going to rely on him a lot. That's the thing about the Cubs lineup is they don't have a ton of power, but if Morel can take a step forward, they'll be in a good place.
I agree. I agree with your Bellinger take a lot. His return to form with Chicago has been amazing to watch.
Absolutely.
But now, moving on to my predictions for the NL and our final ones. I have, like Maddie, I have the LA Dodgers and Atlanta Braves finishing in the top 2 spots. And then rounding out our division winners, I have the Chicago Cubs. And then in our wild card, I have the Philadelphia Phillies, Cincinnati Reds, and the St. Louis Cardinals. And the Phillies are my hot take team. And the reason I say this is because this is probably the best October team we have seen in recent years. They are amazing when it matters most. Listen, they have Bryce Harper, Zach Wheeler, Trey Turner, Aaron Nola, JT Realmuto. The list goes on. They still have this championship level core for, honestly, I think the next 2 years they still have all those players under contract. And unlike the Braves and Dodgers in the recent years, they have proven it in the playoffs, and they've actually beaten those teams in the playoffs. So I have full confidence that a Phillies team with a healthy Bryce Harper can run the table come October and win the World Series. But sadly, that is all the time we have for MLB in this segment. You want to stick around for this because I'll be telling you about the complete insanity that is Victor Wembenyama's rookie year.
So, Tyler Brownrigg. It says in my notes you're an Oklahoma fan.
That is correct.
So, let me ask you, bud. Is Texas back?
All right, I put on a brave face a lot, but this year, I'm really scared that they are, man. Okay, they just beat Alabama. They're gonna be top 4 in the rankings. And last year, they beat us 48-0.
Yeah.
It was humiliating. We're the Oklahoma Sooners. We were the best ever. We were talk of the town. We had Baker, Kyler, and Jalen 3 years in a row. And now, are we good? I don't know. We haven't won a national title since 2000. We're number 18, I think, and nothing matters, dude.
Sometimes we build up these walls thinking they're impenetrable. But sometimes you have to knock these walls down to build up bigger and stronger ones. And you got to be tough through that. It's hard being an Oklahoma fan at this time, but grass is always going to be greener on the other side of the hill, buddy.
Is it? I cannot live through a Texas national championship. I can't. I'll never recover.
Do you want to talk about Lincoln Riley?
What'd you just say to me?
I just want to know if you want to talk about Lincoln Riley.
You listen here, you court-ordered quack.
And welcome back. It is time for the rant, so let's just jump right into it. Victor Wembenyama came into the NBA as one of the most hyped up prospects since LeBron James. And he maybe had even some more hype, some might say, but I think it's safe to say he met all of those lofty expectations and then some. Just to put it in perspective, we have truly never seen anything like him because a player of his size and skill set just should not exist. And he has been absolutely dominating the Rookie of the Year race because of that, which is as expected. So let's dive into his rookie season. He is currently averaging over 20 points per game, which is first among all rookies, and he is the only rookie averaging 20 points per game. Chet Holmgren, who is in second, is averaging 16. He's averaging over 10 rebounds per game, also first among rookies. He is first in blocks among rookies, which also, by the way, he's first in the league in blocks, and he's also fifth in assists per game with 3.5 among rookies. The only thing he really missed this season to add to his stellar rookie year resume was an all-star nod, which he definitely should have been in hindsight. Like, I get the Spurs suck, but like, Wemby deserves to be an all-star, dude. It's just, he so does. Now, does he deserve to be an all-NBA player? I don't think so. Definitely not. But first team defense, he absolutely deserves, which brings us to the other part of his possible resume, the DPOY race. Rudy Gobert is currently the clear favorite for getting his 4th Defensive Player of the Year award of his career. But many would believe that Wemby has a real case for the award. My producer, Andrew Montana, included, which is the reason for me even telling you about this in the first place. So I'll give you a comparison of their stats, and you can decide for yourself. Let's start with Wembenyama. 3.4 blocks per game, that's first in the NBA. 1.3 steals per game, that's 13th in the NBA. And those two numbers combine for a total of 4.7 stocks, which is the most since 1994. And the player who did that, Hakeem Olajuwon, during his back-to-back title run with Houston. He also averages 10 rebounds per game. Another fun fact about Wemby's rookie year, in just 42 games, Wemby had 180 total steals and blocks, which is less than Gobert had in his 2018 Defensive Player of the Year campaign. Now, it's not more than Gobert had in his other Defensive Player of the Year campaigns, but here's the big thing. His defensive win shares, which is I think what is contributing to Gobert getting the nod over Wemby, is 3.6. And if you don't know what that stat is, that stat basically says how many wins a player contributes to their team purely based on their defense. But now let's go to Rudy Gobert. He has 2.1 blocks per game this season, 0.6 steals per game, which gives us a total of 2.6 stocks. Pretty average all around in terms, nothing crazy from, or 2.7, excuse me, nothing crazy from Gobert. Where he really shines is in his rebounds. 12.9 rebounds per game, that's good for second in the league. And the other thing he has over Wemby, his team is currently third in the West with 50 wins. Now here's the thing. Personally, myself, I would pick Rudy Gobert over Wembenyama. Rudy is the favorite for a reason. He is simply one of the best defenders of all time, and the Spurs suck, dude. Wemby is great and amazing, but the Spurs are just awful. And that's fine, all right? That's fine, because Wemby will likely end up challenging Gobert for his 4 DPOYs that he won over his career well into his... Do I think he'll top 4? Maybe. He's just so insane. Because the craziest thing about Wemby that I want to emphasize is that all of these numbers we think are ridiculous, but we also think he should be doing way better because the team around him is just terrible. He's averaging 20, but he could honestly be averaging maybe 25 or more if he had a real point guard who knew how to throw him a lob. He's 7'4". It doesn't make any sense. It's baffling just how awful the Spurs are and are wasting him, kind of, which is crazy to say based on the production he's giving. But anyway, that is sadly all the time we have for this week's episode of Main Show. I hope to see you all next week. But as always, I'm your host, Tyler Brownrigg, signing off.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated champs, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back, okay? Always locked in, now I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.